Hello, and welcome to a Patreon Witcher theory. It's a special one because I don't believe CDPR actually meant for this to be a thing, but I thought of it anyway, so I'm going to share it here. It'll be our secret. And if you haven't watched the Dijkstra video yet, go and watch that first so you know the full story, and we can go from there. Also, I don't actually believe this theory is a thing, really. I really don't. I'm just trying to solve every single plot hole ever in one video. So please don't take it too seriously. Alright, ready? Here's the theory. The Dijkstra we meet in The Witcher 3 is a Doppler. Okay, don't turn off the video yet, just hear me out. I have a theory. It's a really stupid one, but it's a theory nonetheless. So, the whole problem with Dijkstra's character in The Witcher 3 is that he's the complete opposite of what he was, bar most of his smarts. Now, you might say, but Jinsey, he had to flee for his life, live in Zerrikania for years, and I'm sure he felt betrayed and upset, and he cried about it at night and swore vengeance upon those who have wronged him in all the ways, and bar your strangely high voice, all of a sudden, you do have a point. That's a very good point. However, he doesn't really show that kind of change. It's just the strange kind of change. Because the only person who had actually wronged him at the time of The Witcher 3 was Philippa. I'm getting a little ahead of myself though, so let me just backtrack a bit and do this point by point. So first we're going to lay out the type of man Dijkstra is in the books, and not just by descriptions, but by deeds as well. Dijkstra is a patriot. He would do anything for Redania. He would die for Redania. He sails himself over to Kovir to beg for money at court, even though he loathes traveling by sea, and quite frankly, it shouldn't even be him who's doing it. But he does it anyway, because he loves Redania. And here's a little snippet from a conversation between Esterad Thijssen and Dijkstra. You see, continued Esterad, in every country you can find blind fanatics seeking the idea of a social order. They are so committed to that idea that they are willing to do anything. Perhaps even commit the worst crimes, because according to them, the end justifies the means, and justifies their actions. They do not kill, they safeguard the order. They do not torture or blackmail, they protect the right of state and the struggle for order. The life of an individual, if the individual interferes with their dogmas, their established rules, such people are not even worth a shrug. They never become aware that the society they serve consists of precisely these individuals. These people have a so-called broad outlook. Such a view is the surest way not to see other people. Nicodemus the Boot, Dijkstra said. Almost, but not quite. The king of Kovir showed his alabaster teeth. Visigoto of Corvo, a lesser-known philosopher and ethicist, but also very good. Read him, I recommend it. There will still be a book in your country. They will not all been burned. But to the point, to the point. You, Dijkstra, also use unscrupulous intrigue, bribery, blackmail, and torture. You do not blink an eye when sentencing someone to death or ordering a covert assassination. The fact that you do everything for the kingdom you serve faithfully does not excuse you nor earn my sympathy. Not at all. Know this. The spy nodded to indicate that he knew. So, confirmed, Dijkstra would do anything for his country. Even though he's not a fan of brutality, he would stop at nothing to ensure Redania's survival. However, there's one thing he is most reluctant to do, and that is to rule the kingdom. Remember, the ambassador knew that Dijkstra was exaggerating, but not inordinately. Prince Radovid was still a minor, Queen Hedwig distraught by her husband's tragic death, and the aristocracy intimidated, stupefied, at variance, and divided into factions. Dijkstra was the de facto governor of Redania, and could have taken any rank he pleased with no difficulty. But Dijkstra had no desire to do so. He had no desire to do so. The kingdom was well and truly in shambles, and Dijkstra had to have known that he was the ideal candidate. He was a shrewd man who knew how to play the game of politics well, and he knew who to trust and who to keep his eyes on. The best interest of Redania would likely be for Dijkstra to stay in charge. Yet he did not, when he so easily could. Fast forward to The Witcher 3, and what do we see? Ah yes, Dijkstra plotting to assassinate the king of Redania so he can take over the country himself. He claims it's because Radovid is mad and the witch hunts are proof of that, and that he'll run the country into the ground with said madness. However, quite frankly, Radovid's witch burnings aren't really that mad as rulers go. A lot of sorcerers and sorceresses do tend to plot and do tend to cause harm, intentionally or otherwise, and they're hardly the kindest of individuals, again most times. Not to mention that Dijkstra hates sorcerers after the whole Vilgefortz episode in the book, but now all of a sudden he wants to protect them because Radovid is mad. And yes, he does also use the mage thing to get Geralt on his side, but he was helping them regardless, wasn't he? And you could say, oh, well, it's a clever play on what, you know, the Koviri king said to him in the books, but quite frankly, that would still be a very odd change of character. For no particular reason other than to say, haha, isn't that clever? Makes no sense, but isn't that clever though? And sure, Radovid is a bit mad, but not mad enough to run the country into the ground. Dijkstra should know this very well, given that under Radovid's rule they quickly usurped Kedwin and actually put a solid stop to Emir's quick march up north. Not to mention that Roach confirms that Radovid would likely intend to take the rest of the north under Redania's eagle wings as well. And sure, he is a bit of a pain in the butt to mages and non-humans and herbalists and the like, but honestly, every ruler has their problems and Redania still wins. I mean, when you look at Demavend, he probably just couldn't get off without killing an elf in the morning. That's pretty mad. So no, it's not an optimal win, but Dijkstra wouldn't really care about that. He doesn't want to rule and he wants Redania to thrive. Done. That happens with Radovid, and also, here's another one, the nobles everywhere hate Dijkstra. I'm not kidding, they really do. They think of him as lesser and they like to just have him around as little as possible. So if the reason for Ada of Redania, previously Temeria, to be unable to claim the Temerian throne after her father's death is that the nobles don't like it, why is it no problem at all in Redania with a spy who has no claim to the throne whatsoever and is also hated by everybody? And no, you can't use wartime shenanigans to excuse this because this applies in both cases. And Dijkstra is a pretty cool guy and all, but I don't think he can bend the laws of physics, and this is pretty much that. I'm not saying plot hole, but I'm saying plot black hole. To govern a country, you need support of the majority of noble houses, and Dijkstra would never in a million years have that. Unless he's a Doppler. As a Doppler, he could quite literally, in fact, simply become any noble he likes and weasel his way in like that. Need to sign a document that noble house X pledges their undying support and loyalty to the almighty Sigismund Dijkstra? Not a problem. We turn into the head of the household for a hot minute, sign the document, and move on our merry way. And it's not exactly difficult for Dijkstra to find a way to examine the nobles from afar, and that's all a Doppler would need to take their appearance. And you might think, oh, but how does a Doppler become so perfectly Dijkstra-ish? And well, I mean, I do have a full Doppler video on the subject, but in short, when a Doppler turns into a person or animal or whatever else, they don't just take on their appearance, they take on personality traits and thoughts too. But they can still deviate from the copied person's plans, like Dudu did when he copied a man named Dainty. Dudu, appearing as Dainty, made some incredibly smart investments that Dainty never would have dreamed of. Dijkstra has no interest in ruling Redania whatsoever, but a Doppler might. It would certainly be a profitable endeavor, and really it's the only way to get the nobles on his hand, you know, through trickery. Not to mention that, during Dijkstra's perfect ending, he kills Roach, Ves, and Thaler, betraying them entirely, even though, really, that wasn't necessary at all. He could have just worked out a better deal, but he didn't. He decided to un-Dijkstra-esque betray his allies, lie about a bunch of crap, and then he goes on to rule all the North, which a lot of people seem to emphasize in the ending screen, sometimes against their will. But then if Geralt intervenes and says he won't let Dijkstra kill his friends, Dijkstra says, okay then, I'll kill you too. Look, I don't want to be a spoilsport, but the Dijkstra from Thanet Isle would be well aware that against this particular party of individuals, him and his cronies stand not a single sodding chance. Even if it's just Geralt, it's Geralt. Geralt, who beat not just Dijkstra, but his little group of guards all on his own at Thanet Isle. And here he had help of the bloody Blue Stripes commander himself, his right-hand woman, and a veteran of the intelligence service. Dijkstra is many things, but he's not a blithering idiot, and in this case he is acting like a blithering idiot. The real Dijkstra wouldn't just throw his life away like that, even if he did want to go through with a plan so incredibly stupid, so ridiculous, so riddled with holes, so impressively moronic, so painfully obviously about to fail. He wouldn't be there himself to see it happen, now would he? If there's even a small chance that this plan would fail, he'd just send his cronies and get it done with. He's Dijkstra, not Dumpstra, the most intelligent spy master the North ever had the pleasure of dealing with, and he gets up one morning and says, "Yeah, alright lads, let me take 8 or so of my reasonably okay-ish men and openly betray 4 armed-to-the-teeth veterans of combat while I'm standing there with my arse on display on the podium and watch. This'll work out splendidly." As a Doppler, though, perhaps his mind was somewhat muddled. Perhaps he thought Dijkstra's memories were a bit exaggerated. Surely one man wouldn't be able to kill a whole group of well-trained soldiers and the illustrious spy master all at the same time. The Doppler would be wrong, of course. So here's what I think happened. Dijkstra found his way to Zerrikania and figured out a reasonably comfortable way of life in said country. Hell, he might have even moved on to Hackland, cause why not? And I think he stayed there and lived the high life, using every trick in the book to rake in some cash. He may have very well sent his Doppler self back to the North as well, with, as an initial plan, the orders to get him established elsewhere. But then the Doppler got cocky and tried to take over the country, and it all went to shit, because let's be real, the Dijkstra ending is so uncanon it makes my eyes and ears bleed simultaneously, and that's an impressive feat all on its own. But Dijkstra, clever Dijkstra, betrayed by Philippa and watching the war from afar, likely already knew that going back to the North was going to be risky. The Doppler was his little test to see how quickly assassins might be back on his trail, because Dijkstra is clever. He's a clever lad, not like that Doppler. In this scenario, Clever Clogs Dijkstra wins every time. He sends a Doppler to the North, establishes himself, and if all goes well, he'll have a place to return to eventually because he's in cahoots with the Doppler and it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Or the Doppler goes back to the North and gets himself horribly killed by Geralt of Rivia and his best friends, which means everyone will think Dijkstra is dead, giving Sir Cleverer than the Doppler, the real Dijkstra, an easy way to return to the North at any given time. Because he's dead, remember? Even if Doppler Dijkstra would make it as a leader of Redania, it wouldn't matter. Dijkstra doesn't want to rule, sure, but he doesn't have to. His Doppler self is ruling in his stead, giving him all kinds of very easy connections too. So, Dijkstra is a heckin' genius, and Witcher 3 Dijkstra is a Doppler. Thank you for coming to this extra morning Patreon show, and fail!